This is Kerri Fuhr Keffeler, and I've recorded this little video for you to show you exactly how I make my Lampwork heart beads. I love making these. I put them into pendants and lots of different kinds of jewelry. I use them a lot for giveaways. They're really fun to do, so I hope you find this really helpful. I'm starting off here by using quite a powerful torch that I've used for a long time. It's a Carlisle, and it's a Hellcat by Carlisle. I love it because it's got the outer ports, the inner ports. It gives me a lot of heat and good heat control. But of course, you can do this bead with any torch that you have. Yes, even on a hothead. So the glass colors I'm using are Tapestry White, which as you can see, I've built a gather and I'm using that for the core of my bead. The red rod that you see sitting down there is the CIM Sangre. I love that. It's a big, beautiful, bold, juicy red, so it makes beautiful hearts. And the size of mandrel that I'm using is a 332-inch mandrel. And the white is just regular Tapestry White. So what I do is I start with making a gather, a pretty good size gather. I'm going to be using a heart press. It's a tong heart press that I bought from Franz Art Glass many, many years ago. I'm not sure if they're still in production, so you can check the website there, or I'm sure you must have possibly a heart press of your own that you can use. So I've made my core of white glass, and now I've gotten the red nice and hot. I'm melting it, and I'm adding it to either side of the white gather. There's a couple of reasons I do this. Primarily, it's to keep the white from seeping through the bead ends. I really like to have a clean end to my beads, and sometimes the outer or the inner core color will squeeze out and give a little white mark at the top and bottom. But if you encase your core color on the outsides first and work your way in, it usually helps prevent that problem. So now I'm swiping on layers of the really juicy red that I've got here, putting it on one little bit at a time. You could do a really large gather and probably do this more quickly, but I just find this works really well for me. So I'm carefully overlaying all the white areas with the sangre red. And it's okay if you double up and some areas are a little thicker than others. Generally this really, once it's melted, is just a lovely, lovely shade of red. You'll find some areas will be a little deeper and some will be a little brighter, but it gives a really lively variation of color, so I really enjoy using it. This rod is not particularly shocky, which is nice. So for those of you that don't know what that means, it doesn't tend to pop and crack when you introduce it into the heat. Sometimes certain glass colors will do that, and you'll lose half of a rod before you get your bead done. But the sangre works really nice. I also am keeping this high up in the flame, so it's not too far down. I don't want to burn my glass. I want to keep it molten and warm. I work behind the flame a lot and up high above the cone, so it's just a really nice warm area, keeps my bead at an even temperature, and allows me to overlay the surface color pretty evenly. So here I am smoothing it out. It's a little bit off camera there, but I'm using a handheld marver just to touch up the ends and keep them nice and tidy while I slowly melt this in. This is a good time to check to see if you've missed any areas. If there's any white that's seeping through, you can come in and touch it up with your red. And I'm using my little handheld marver to build a bit of a cone at the bottom on the left side. Now this is because my heart press faces to the right, so the bottom of the heart will be on my left. So I prepare the bead ahead of time to fit into the press by just shaping that bottom end into a cone shape. So I'm doing that with my handheld marver, just giving it a gentle press. Looks like I have missed a few spots. When you do that, sometimes the white will expose. Oh, I lost a piece of my glass there. That does happen. So it looks like I've just need to do a little touch up. So I'm just heating my end of my rod, and I'm adding a little bit of glass. And this is actually also to help with the shape. So as you can see, it's almost looking like a heart shape now. I'm just adding and adding to the crown of the heart so that it's going to be nice and full. You can freeform this shape if you want. You don't have to use a press. I like a press because I like the consistency with this particular heart shape. It gives it a really nice, smooth, puffy kind of look, which makes for a beautiful pendant. But I will also freeform hearts and make them flat, and then I can use those to decorate and put animals or creatures, birds and flowers and things on. They're easy to decorate. I will be decorating this one for you. I'll be doing some stringer design, my sort of signature, I guess, Tapestry Scrollwork, which I love to do. So now I'm touching it into the heart press, and very slowly and very gently using the press to get the general shape. So once I've done that, I want to give it a little bit of love in the flame there and gently smooth off the edges of where the glass may have oozed out of the press a bit there. I want it to be smooth. I'm using gravity to help me as well. So as I am heating this, you'll see I'm holding it upside down. That allows gravity to kind of come and make the heart a little smoother, sort of the cheeks of the heart. And then it also helps to keep any white glass from seeping through right in the center. So I'm going to just keep that nice and cool on the top part of the flame. I don't want to get it too hot because if I do, it will lose its shape. So that's why the bead is getting darker right now, because it's not as cool. So now I'm starting to apply my stringer. And this is a batch of double helix Terra. There's many variations of this color. Any kind of color will do, but I've always loved this one very much. I pull my stringers quite thin, and I always recommend pull a lot of stringers ahead of time because they do break. As you're working in the flame, they will snap on you, and you want to have a lot there ready to pick up. I'm working just behind the flame, and as you can see, I'm not really doing a lot of complicated designs, just a lot of very simple C shapes, and I'm attaching them together. Scrollwork isn't really one continuous line. It's little pieces of glass that you apply one little bit at a time and link them together. So now I'm making leaves. These are little dots that are going to be leaves. I'm applying them where I would want the leaves to be in my scrollwork design. You can do them one at a time, but I tend to, just for efficiency, like to place all my dots ahead of time, kind of go around the whole bead and see where there's some gaps, where there's going to need to be something to fill that space. I go from back to front continually so that everything melts in nice and evenly. And then I'm not worried about some of the glass popping off. If it gets too cool, you reintroduce it into the flame. You know, it can pop off and shoot across your table. You don't want that to happen. So keep everything nice and smooth by very gently keeping it in the flame. And I'm going in here with my handheld marver and very gently pressing on those dots. I want them to be flat, but not totally melted in. If you look closely, they're like a little platform, right? There's a little bit raised up above. And now I'm using my bent steel pick. This is not a tungsten pick, it is steel. It's the $4 or $5 one you can get at Fran's and most other glass shops. I've been using this since I started making beads, 100 years ago. It feels that way anyway. And what I use the pick for is to grab and pull the glass. So you see how I'm actually in the flame? I know that many of you have been taught to never put your tools in the flame. And when I teach students this for the first time, it's a bit unfamiliar and a bit uncomfortable because they're so worried they're going to damage their tool. The trick, and the reason why I use steel, is that first of all, steel is very strong, and I have a little glass of water that just outside the camera view, where when you see that I pulled the pick away, I'm dunking it in the water and I'm cooling it. So that really helps keep the life of my tools lasting a lot longer. They still will wear out over time, but you can always resharpen them. If you have a grinder, you can resharpen them and keep using them. So what I'm doing here is I'm cooling the pick after every second or third pull, and I'm just very gently pulling the dots. So I'll pull the dots outwards, and then I will pull the dots inwards to connect the dots with the vines so that you see it's starting to look like leaves. You can just do a single dot, or you can do 3 dots in a triangle shape, and that gives you a really nice leaf shape once you pull it with the pick or with the rake. So if you've melted the dots totally in, sometimes you don't have as much control. So it's nice if you can keep your design ever so slightly raised off the surface of the bead. It allows you a little bit more control, and it allows you to correct mistakes if you need to. So I'm picking up a little bit of the fine stringer again and melting those in one little dot at a time. And this is also to fill more space. So it looks like I needed another little leaf here, so I just added one in. And you can have it as simple or as complicated as you want. That's the fun of this type of bead. It's a free-form design. I enjoy having the design evenly distributed around the bead. That's my personal preference, but you can certainly do it any way you like. I think it would be quite pretty if you had just the scrollwork on one side and maybe flowers on the other. You could also do polka dots, stripes, pretty much anything you can imagine. I've put initials and drawn little other designs on here, but the scrollwork is my favorite. It's simple, it's elegant, and I think it goes with just about everything. So now I'm coming through and giving this bead a lot of love in the flame. I'm very gently just touching it with my handheld marver, and that is made of graphite, so it doesn't stick to the bead, which is nice. It's nice and smooth, and it will help give your bead a really nice, smooth finish. You can choose to either completely melt this in and have it very, very smooth, or you can leave the design a little bit raised if you want a little bit of texture. Both yield beautiful results. Just be careful to really take your time and melt it in evenly. See how I'm rotating the bead back and forth? That is to keep the heat even throughout the bead. So this is a fairly small bead. It's not going to crack that easily, but it's still a really good practice just to keep flipping your bead back and forth. Here I'm using gravity again. As you can see, when it's really glowing, that tells me that the heat is nice and even. And I think I'm getting pretty close to the end. Give you a look at the finished bead. Keep it nice and warm in the flame. You want to make sure that it's evenly heated before it goes in the kiln. Well, there it is, folks. I hope you found that helpful and educational, and I hope that you're going to make a lot of hearts of your own. Thanks for watching.